Hello, everybody, and welcome to the first episode of the UnchARTed Podcast. I'm David Borsi.
And I'm Andrea Tabanyag. And for this podcast, we're going to be talking about the cultural misconceptions as well as the stigma that surrounds the art industry here in the Philippines.
I'd actually like to start this topic by, let's start with the positives. I like to think that art is an important part of our society as a whole. Art is important because it's present everywhere. It's present in our media, in our culture, in the clothes we wear even. If you really think about it, the designs of those shirts were made by
Artists.
exactly. And without these artists, well, we wouldn't have these design shirts. In fact, even back then, in the older times, we wouldn't have those barong Tagalogs if it wasn't for the artists that designed them. Even our Philippine flag was designed by artists. And I think people usually think that artists are typically people that like to paint, sketch, or work with oil. But actually, art is bigger than that. It is a form of expression, and these forms of expression could come in many different forms. They could be through our movies, through our media, through our culture, even through less known ways, such as, well, planting. If you really think about it, planting is also a form of art because of the way we let things grow, we let things develop. I like to think that art isn't just creativity, but to create. When we create something, we create art.
I agree. And I think that also an additional thing to think of here is that art actually is able to contribute to our world, to our society. And what do I mean by this? It creates jobs for people, it creates livelihoods, and a lot of people, the traditional mindset here in the Philippines and the biggest cultural misconception that we have is that art cannot provide you a future, or it cannot actually be a sustainable livelihood for you. And that's what a lot of people think. But I think that's wrong because art, it comes in many different forms, as you said, right? It's not just painting, it's not just selling your paintings or making art for people. It's also the clothes we wear. Like, people, how are we gonna have an economy, or how are we gonna have clothes? How are we gonna have all of these different things without artists, without them doing these things for us? And I think that's something we really need to think about, and we shouldn't look down on artists.
I'd also like to point out another thing is that here in the Philippines, we have a very big culture in karaoke.
Yeah.
And surprisingly, or unsurprisingly even, these karaoke songs were made by, well, artists originally. Artists, music artists. So in a way, we have a culture that centers around appreciating these forms of music, yet we still believe that you can't make a career out of it, or that it's a dead end. Well, if it was a dead end, and we place these mindset onto people, who is going to create the music?
Exactly.
How are we going to have karaoke nights?
You won't.
Exactly. So, in a way, it's sort of ironic how here in the Philippines, we have a culture where we look down upon pursuing the arts, when in fact, here in the Philippines, art is so widely consumed.
Exactly. And I think to add to that, it creates communities because, as you said, like karaoke, or there are certain things that we do as a community. There are things that we do that bring us together, and we can thank only art for that. Without art, life would be so boring. We wouldn't be able to do anything because literally art is all around us. This sofa, these clothes, these microphones, the camera that's being used to film us right now, it's art. And I think people need to recognize that.
All this talk about the importance of art, I also want to know the people behind it, the artists. Why are they integral, or why are they important to our society as a whole?
Well, I think that artists, their brains or their skills, their capacities are different from other people. And I'm not saying that there should be a comparison there, but I'm just saying that artists provide these new perspectives. And I think that's really useful in our society because then we get to learn from each other. We get to, as I said, we have communities, right? Artists, they can learn from each other. They can get their styles from other people. They can get inspired. And I think that's really important because you cannot just do things on your own all the time. You need to find inspiration through other people, through other artworks. And that's why I think that, artists are really important in society. But what do you think about artists?
Well, I also think that they are important in our society. Obviously, that's the objective of this podcast. But I'd also like to think that, well, in a way, art or creativity is like a ball we keep passing around to each other. What do I mean by this? Well, imagine someone gets inspired, so they have a ball. This ball represents inspiration and creativity. And when someone feels inspired, they release this ball to the rest of society. Now, this ball keeps bouncing around people. And when one person feels inspired and creates a form of art, another person feels inspired and wants to do the same thing. They want to express themselves the same way this person was able to. And through that, it creates this sort of cycle or circle of creativity where one person gets inspired, then another gets inspired, then another, and this keeps branching out until, well, everyone gets inspired or more and more people get inspired. I'd like to think that these forms of art help us, well, express ourselves further. And these forms of expression aren't just exclusive to the traditional means of art, but even through, for example, planting, like I mentioned earlier. The creativity behind it, the way that the plants are grown, the way that they're taken care of, the way that we present them,
Yeah.
even through other things like video games. I mean, very relevant to nowadays. These are also forms of art if you really think about it. The most recent popular games, I mean, not to get a bit technical here, but one of the most recent games, God of War Ragnarok, has came out a few months ago. And well, this game has beautiful world building. This game tells a beautiful story and creates this amazing world. And well, these worlds wouldn't exist without the developers or the game developers behind it.
Exactly. The artists.
Exactly. Because we'd like to think that these are game developers. So obviously they're not artists because it's not in their name.
Yeah.
But they created. When we create, we make art. When we plant, we make art. When we cook, we make art. In fact, there's been even a surrounding culture where sometimes people would call chefs artists.
Yeah.
The way they cook is a form of art. And the food that they present is artistic in nature. The presentation is important. The taste is important. So all these culminate together to essentially create. And when we create, it's art. And you know, with all this talk about the importance of art and the importance of artists, I'd also like to address, well, obviously, the elephant in the room, the cultural negatives surrounding it. I mean, one of the first things that we think of is, well, not to point fingers, but sometimes even our parents. There have been many times where even though our parents support us financially and put us through school, sometimes our dreams take the brunt of it, where we desire to pursue something in the arts, or pursue something greater. But naturally, parents want stability, which they believe that art is too free to have stability. I think that that's a common misconception and a bad stigma surrounding art. I mean, if you really think about it, the celebrities of today were able to make a career out of what they've done. You're able to climb the ladder. And let me reiterate once again, the arts isn't just exclusive to being a celebrity or drawing paintings, but it could be even in the form of communication. It could be in the form of cooking. And if you really think about it, everybody needs to eat. So when you pursue the arts, the culinary arts, in the name itself, obviously that is a very good career to pursue because, I mean, there are going to be hardships on the way.
Of course.
We don't doubt that at all. But what career does it? What career is an easy shot to the end? Even being a doctor, which is a doctor and a nurse, which is one of the most common jobs taken up here in the Philippines, still is very hard to obtain. I mean, 7 years of medical school, then pre-med, then medical. So in a way, that's not easy in and of itself. And being a doctor is a very competitive job. You have to be good, the best at your job if you want to get tons of recommendations.
Exactly.
So isn't the same thing with being an artist? If we allow these talents to culminate and develop, can you pursue the arts and become the best in your respective arts?
Exactly. It takes time. You don't just get there right away.
Exactly. And if we don't allow it to culminate, how are we so sure that it's not possible? I mean, think about it. When we hinder these talents, when we hinder these abilities, it sort of creates a stigma that, well, art is not pursuable. And if no one pursues art, what society will we live in?
And additionally, people think that art should just be a hobby. Have you heard that?
Oh,
Common
so many
misconception? Yes, people think like, oh, if art is just like your passion, why can't you just do it on the side while you take a really practical route, like being like a doctor or an engineer or something? But what if that's not what I want to do, right? What if I want to be an artist? What if I want to be a broadcast reporter? What if I just want to do these things that make me happy? It's my passion, you know? And I think that art, like having art as your passion, it pushes you to get to that place that you want to be in. Like you said, right? You don't just get an easy shot at success. You have to work for it. And I think that you won't be able to work for that success if you're in a field that you don't truly enjoy. Because there's no motivation there, right? You're just like, you're forcing yourself to be at a 9 to 5 job, sitting at a desk, when you could be at home doing what you really love. But no, you're there in your job. And I think that you can't even balance a hobby of art because then it just feels like a pastime. It doesn't feel like you're actually doing it because you enjoy it anymore.
I'd actually like to say that, well, there's nothing wrong with taking a 9 to 5 job, obviously.
Yeah,
There
of
are
course.
there are different situations for different people. I like how you mentioned how these people's brains are wired differently. Of course, not in a bad way,
Yeah.
but it creates a sense that, well, not everyone has their own calling. Everyone is cut from a different cloth. And that's good because we're all individuals. We're all passionate and creative in our own ways. Some people are more cut up for more scientific jobs, educational jobs, engineering jobs. But some people are more cut up for creativity and expression and, well, to create. That's not to say that one should be compared to the other, like you mentioned earlier. But all of these factors are important because all of these culminate together to, well, create our society. We wouldn't have our society without the doctors, without the engineers, without the policemen, without the firemen, without all these very important jobs that's crucial to society. But again, how are we supposed to have our karaoke nights without these singers? How are we supposed to watch our late night talk shows without these hosts?
Or eat food.
Without these chefs. Exactly. So the stigma surrounding that art is too free or that art should not be pursued just for the sole purpose that it leads to a dead end makes me really question it because what dead end?
Exactly.
If it's truly a dead end, then why are people pursuing it? If it's truly a dead end, why are we consuming it?
And why are people successful? Like, are there actual people that you can see that have succeeded if it is truly a dead end?
Exactly. That's not to say that art is is as simple as people say it is, or that's not to say that we're defending art in a way that like anyone can do. Anyone can do it, but not everyone is cut out for it.
Yeah.
In the same way that not everyone is cut out for scientific jobs or mathematical jobs, but that's okay. What we're trying to sort of create is a sense of acceptance for these things, not a sense of comparison, but we want to make sure that people know that they are free to express themselves. They are free to pursue these things. They're free to dream. So I'd like to think that, well, art is important. It's crucial to our society, and we should let these things culminate and grow and allow people to create. So anyway, that's all the time we have left for this episode. Tune into episode 2 where we have a special guest.
And always remember, take the path uncharted. Bye.